Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Mahoney. I'm the Director of Development at the Archdiocese of Vancouver, and it's my great pleasure to be with you all here tonight. I'm just gonna let everything sit for about 30 seconds, let everybody log on, because we're expecting about 150, possibly 200 guests tonight for this session, which is absolutely fantastic. We've had a tremendous response, and we're very excited to be with you all here tonight. And we have some great speakers lined up, and I've done a few of these in the past, and really had some just great feedback. And we're going to look to get some more of that from all of you tonight as we go through the evening. So again, if you're just joining us right now, my name is Michael Mahoney. I am the Director of Development at the Archdiocese of Vancouver, and I'm going to be your MC for the evening and kind of walk you through the next hour. And speaking of that, we really appreciate you joining us, and we're going to try to keep this to right on an hour tonight. It's a weeknight, so you can settle in with the family and activities and all the rest of it. So the whole idea tonight is really to give you some insight and information into these great topics and these fantastic expert speakers. And then from there, you'll have the opportunity to connect directly. You can reach out to myself or any one of the three speakers. And we're going to do a quick 1-2 question sort of pop-up survey once each speaker is done. And we'd love to get your feedback on that as we continue to try to improve these sessions now that we're all in the tech world. And hopefully we'll do some of these in person soon. But for the sake of this evening, again, we're going to keep it to about an hour. And we really want you to listen and kind of go a la carte. Certain things you may like, write down some notes, have some questions, and we will be sure to follow up with you directly, one-on-one, or whatever may interest you at this point in your path and what's best for you and your family. So with that, we have three great speakers coming up. I have Bob Breen, who's going to be talking to us about advanced care planning. And then we have Joe Vandebus, who is going to be talking to us directly about wills and estates and charitable gift planning with some great insights. And Joe brings a ton of experience there. And then my good friend Peter Knowles will be talking to us about planned memorial care and the peace of mind that sort of comes with that process. And Peter operates Gardens of Gethsemane out in White Rock, if you haven't been there. So it's a packed hour here. We're going to jump right in, and again, we're going to have a few pop-up surveys. We encourage you to participate, and let's get started. So I'm going to go to mute, and you'll see my video go off, and Bob's going to come on, and we'll go from there.
Everybody, as Mike had said, my name is Bob Breen, and I'm the Executive Director for the Catholic Health Association. One of our biggest roles is trying to reach out to parishes, to communities for education on issues like advanced care planning, spirituality in end of life, and we run programs on that. Tonight, I'm going to very quickly jump over a presentation that we usually take about an hour to do, or well, about 40 minutes to do, with questions after that. And we are going to be planning another session later in probably in November that is strictly on advanced care planning. And tonight, as Mike said, is a chance to give you a little bit of a bits and pieces of this, as well as other aspects of later life issues that people are going to be deciding on. So I'm just going to jump right in, as we're going to try to do this in about 10 minutes. If I can have the next slide, please, Fernando. So why is advanced care planning important? It's really key because it reduces a lot of the stress in the same way that planning for your funeral ceremony, etc. Planning for these things are really important to take stress off you, and it also makes sure that people who care for you know what your wishes are going to be. If you happen to be in a state where you can't make any decisions, or you can't express any wishes, could be unconscious, you just could not be able to speak, reduces conflict on who's going to make decisions on your behalf. If you reach a state where you're not able to make decisions, Having been the CEO of a long-term care home, I can tell you there's going to be infighting between people if they disagree on what care you should receive. Having some of these documents that I'll talk about in a minute, get rid of that. And I think Joe's going to talk about wills. Very important to have that because it really does the same thing for after you die. It gets rid of all those arguments in the family and make sure that you don't die intestate. Could I have the next slide, please? So there's about 4 documents that are really important to have for advanced care planning. The first is a representation agreement, and there's 2 forms of the representation agreement. Neither of these forms require a lawyer, but they do need to be signed by witnesses. And they do sort of the same thing, but not the same thing. So a Section 7 agreement gives people the power to make basic care need decisions for you and routine financial decisions. So it could be somebody who's going to pay your rent for you, pay your hydro bills, electrical bills, and things like that, but no major financial decisions. And basic care needs, you're taking you to the doctor, telling the doctor, needs to have this done or that done. Section 9 agreement gives an individual the ability to make decisions about life prolonging and medical interventions. There's no financial decisions that they're allowed to make with a Section 9. And talk about that on the next slide, which is about giving people the power of attorney, and then they're able to make those. So Section 9, they're able to make decisions that are more advanced and about life prolonging. Do we take him off or her off a feeding tube, etc.? Is there a do not resuscitate order? They can make those decisions. What they cannot make, and I always get this question, is can they make a decision for me to have made? No, they cannot. You are the only one that can do that. And that has to be done in writing, etc. So I've had people call me and worry that if they give this decision to somebody else, they'll be able to end their life and they don't want to. That can't happen. Both of these documents end when you die. They're only about making decisions while you are alive and unable to make them. The advance directive is not really a document that you have to make and get signed. What an advance directive is you need to sit down, you talk to your spouse, to your children, and say, these are the things I want to have done if I can't make decisions. So although they're making decisions for you, they will know and understand what it is you want to have done. And that can be done any way. You can do it. You can print it up. You can give it to people. Sit down, have a discussion over the table with people. You can appoint somebody who can be your temporary substitute decision maker. Who, if you're in a car accident, you're unconscious, until you're able to make a decision, that's the person who will make decisions for you. If you don't do that and you don't have a representation agreement, the hospital will make the decision based on a ladder of things, and I'll show you that in a minute as well. And this can be in addition to a representation agreement. Now the next slide, please. The next one is medical orders for scope of treatment. It's called a MOST document. This isn't something that you have to do with your family physician. And it is a medical order. And you sit down with your physician and say, these are the things and the levels of care that I want to have if I get into a certain condition. I mean, before we used to have the do not resuscitate orders, or if you were in long-term care, they had a list of decisions that you would have made. And I'll give you an example. If something happens, do I want you to take me to the hospital and do everything possible you can to keep me alive? Do I just want you to give me care that will keep me comfortable? Do I want to not take any care other than what is normal, feeding, etc., that is necessary for them to give? So that is something, if you don't have it, or if you're dealing with or talking with a parent who's elderly, they should have this discussion with their family physician. This is the next one is the enduring power of attorney. And this is an agreement, and it needs to be signed and witnessed by a lawyer. And it gives financial decisions to somebody that you trust very dearly, because those financial decisions include things like selling a home, selling an automobile. They have control over financial decisions that are going to be made on your behalf while you can't make them. Sometimes people give that to their spouse. In our case, I have my power of attorney for my wife. She has it for me. It may be a child, maybe a relative, or it may be a best friend. But it's something that if you go to see the attorney about your will, you should certainly talk about power of attorney. Will, I'm not going to say anything about that because Mike is going to talk about those. The will is what takes over when you die, and all of these other things disappear. Power of attorney goes away, representation agreements go away, medical orders for treatment go away. Will is what the only document that is in effect after that. Let's go to the next slide, please. I know this is going really quickly. We will have my slides will be available to you. I'll pass them on to Anna so she can send them out to those who wish to have a copy of them. So when you have an advanced care directive, it's really important that you don't just have it written down. It's important that you talk to people about it so that people know what it is you want, and they know that the advanced care directive is there. They'll know that they're on it because they have to sign it as well. But if they're your temporary decision maker, they should know that, and talk to people about what you want to have done if you can't make decisions, why you want to have it done, how far do you want treatment to go, etc. And you can also, in that document, tell things like, this is how I want my funeral service to go. I want to be cremated. I want to be buried at Gardens of Gethsemane. Well, both of those could end up at Gardens of Gethsemane, but they need to know those things. If they don't, they may make decisions that you would not want to have made on your behalf. Next slide, please. How are we doing for time? Okay. This is really quick. You'll be able to see this inside. This is just what a hospital will follow. If you end up in a hospital and you can't make a decision, they're going to go through a template or a protocol to say, is there an advanced care directive? They know about it. If they don't, is there a temporary decision maker? No. Then on the left, you'll see spouse is the first one they'll talk to, then child, then parent, then sibling, etc. And that's the order they go in. It's a pecking order. And the first one they find is the one that will make the decision for you. The next slide, please. I'm not going to talk about medical assistance in dying because we don't have much time for this, other than to say that people cannot make this decision for you. It is something that you must make with qualified medical personnel, and there's a document that you have to sign. And of course, in there, it also tells you that it's not something the church approves, but we can talk about that at another time in another presentation. Next slide, please. What's acceptable if I have a terminal illness? This is also in a document that we have on our website, chabc.bc.ca. In a document, it's advanced care planning for Catholics. It's on the website. You can look at all of the things. You are able, according to the Catholic Church, you can refuse treatment if it's disproportionate to the advantage that it gives you. So you don't have to have chemotherapy for 6 weeks and be sick as a dog, and it may not make any difference. You have the option of saying that is totally acceptable by the Catholic Church. And the principle of double effect is that medical people can give you medication that also has the possibility of shortening or ending your life, as long as the purpose is to just deal with the pain. The example I can give of that is people who have bone cancer. They are in excruciating pain. And sometimes, I mean, not often, but sometimes, depending on their medical condition, the drugs that they give to kill the pain could end up in their death. That's acceptable to the church. Next slide. This is just an advanced care planning wallet card that you can carry in your wallet. It's on our website. You can download these and print them on card format, like the cards that you get at Staples for business cards. You can print up 10 of them. You can actually fill them in first with your computer and then print them up. Next slide. So this is the one slide that is really important. The best I have ever seen on writing up and doing advanced care planning is under that number one, which is neatus.ca. They have copies of all of the representation agreements that are in there. They talk about how to use them. They talk about advanced care planning. It's a great site to go to. So if you remember one thing from this presentation, it's neatus.ca, and it will give you all you need to know. Our own site, chabc.bc.ca, gives you the advanced care planning, a Catholic perspective. The document, you will look at it and you'll say, gee, it's only 2012. Nothing has changed since 2012 in terms of advanced care planning, the Catholic Church, and what the only thing that's not in there is MAID, but we can, as I say, we don't know whether we should be putting anything in this document about that or not. And then the third one is health.gov.bc.ca. It's a government document. It's called My Voice. You can still get it on that website. And it's another very good document about the forms that you need for advanced care planning. Next slide, please. So we're not going to take questions right now. They're just going to put a really quick question up for you to answer, a survey, and then we'll move on after that to the next speaker. So once they get the responses in on this.
Yeah, so we'll just give it 20 seconds for everybody could participate and answer the question. That'll be great. And then we will move on to our second speaker this evening.
That's the fastest 45-minute presentation I've ever given.
Yeah, and for all our guests tonight, you know, what Bob's saying there exactly is that's about an hour of information into 10 minutes. So everything you hear tonight, as you said, the slides are available to you. Everything's recorded. You'll have access to all this information. And again, if you like to meet with one of us confidentially, just for free, just to explore any of these topics tonight, just reach out and we'll take it from there. So thanks, Bob. Really appreciate that. And with that, we'll turn the page over to our next speaker, Joe. Joe, I'm going to let you jump in and introduce yourself and take it away.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Michael. You can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. I'm Joe Vanderbush, and I'm from St. Anne's Parish in Abbotsford. I've been in our Catholic community as a volunteer for over the last 20 years, with time spent in the Catholic schools and the parish council and the parish finance committees. I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus and the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre, and I give back where I can over the years. As an advisor, I've been working for over 27 years in the financial and estate planning field. I have many financial designations which are meant to help provide the resources we will need when we work together to build your plans. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Maureen, and I have 2 adult children. So it's important to understand what I am and what I am not, since tonight we'll be discussing many things which include legal issues and estate laws. However, I'm not a lawyer. We will also discuss many things that deal with taxes and accounting. However, I'm not an accountant. What I am is an estate and financial planner who helps my clients make sure their investments and insurance are in proper position to not only meet their protection and retirement needs, but also address their unique estate planning goals. So what is the job of a financial and an estate planner? In a nutshell, it's this. Here we have a beautiful day. When we talk, I want you to share your vision. Share what your beautiful day looks like to you. My job is to listen. Pay attention to the details of your picture. Not try and change it, but help you become aware of anything that might wreck your picture. This one little detail can wreck your beautiful day. On this beautiful day, my family was enjoying some pierogies on the pier at Granville Island, and we wanted to capture the view of the cityscape. Minutes later, we saw a splash in the water and rescue boats rushing to the scene as the man on the bridge had jumped. It was only later that evening, when looking at our family photos, that we saw the silhouette of the man moments before he jumped. We still talk about this day over 10 years later. So how does this help you? When I meet with clients, they share their picture, and sometimes it looks like the guy on the left. In order to help you, first we need to make sense of what we're looking at. As I understand your picture, we can get organized. This can seem daunting at first, but do the easy things first. Pull together your papers, your current will, your power of attorney, the advance directives, the rep agreement, your most document, also your tax returns, any insurance policies or investment certificates or statements that you have, your loans papers, your property assessments, and those types of things. Then set a time aside and review everything with me or with your professional advisor and get a clear understanding of where you are. Together, we will work to organize your affairs so they more closely resemble the information on the right. My goal is to help you achieve your goals. It's not to tell you how you should live your life, but to help you have a plan so you can live your fullest version of your life. Why plan? Why have a will? Why give money to charity? Why leave anything for the ones you love? You have to understand your why. Then you need to share it with me or your advisor. And the better I understand what you want, the easier it'll be for me to help you build your plan. If you have a guy standing on the bridge, I can point it out to you and we can decide what we want to do. This is your plan, it's not mine. So it's important it does what you want it to do. Once we have a plan, we need to build it. And that can involve lawyers and accountants, licensed insurance and investment advisors, funeral directors, banks, and the list goes on. We help you with this using the Archdiocese Allied Professional Network, helping you to deal with a Catholic resource as much as possible. With the plan built, you can rest easy knowing your annual reviews with myself or your advisor will catch any changes the government dreams up, and know that if anything dramatic changes in your life, which might change the plan, we are only an email or a phone call away. It's important to surround ourselves with good people in our personal life. The same thing is true about our financial life. It's important to surround yourself with good people. And when it comes to your financial and estate planning, it's important to make sure these people are properly qualified to assist you. When we go to the doctor, their certificates are on the wall, and you can recognize, and they're recognized by a governing body. We know this knowledge, with this knowledge, we are able to comfortably sit down with our family doctor and share our story, knowing they will do their educated best to help us. This is no different in the financial and estate planning world. If you don't see their certificates or licensing, ask them about their education and licenses. And unfortunately, at this point, there is no requirement for a financial planner or financial advisor in BC to have any education at all. Anyone can just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a financial advisor. Take out an ad and off they go. Thank goodness that is not the case for our doctors and our lawyers. So be sure to ask, because advisors who invest in their education, get licensed in the area they want to provide advice, and carry errors and omissions insurance are in a much better position to assist you, and you are protected if they make a mistake. Hopefully the government in BC follows the lead of other jurisdictions and requires you to be properly qualified to call yourself a financial planner or a financial advisor. Until then, it's up to you to make sure that your advisor is qualified. I recommend you try and work with somebody who has at least attained their CFP. This means they're educated and they have a governing body you can go to with your concerns. Your advisor needs to also carry errors and omissions insurance. This protects you from any mistakes which could be made. Many industries make this mandatory. This is typical when you're dealing with lawyers, accountants, insurance, and investment advisors. However, unregulated financial advisors may not carry any protection for you at all, so be sure to ask. Currently, over 75% of Canadians over the age of 65 do not have a current will in place. Without a will, your estate proceeds will be distributed based on current intestate laws for BC. Currently, these laws will leave no money or assets to the charities you support. Having a will is the easiest and first item to be addressed when you want to ensure your affairs are handled as you would want them to be and not how the government would like to see. As a certified financial planner, when I start, when I do estate planning, I like to start with the end in mind. We review your will, and if you don't have one, I work with you to get your thoughts together so we can have one written. So what is a will? A will is simply a set of instructions of what you would want to have happen with all of your worldly possessions. In your will, you name your executor who will carry out your wishes. I recommend doing your will through a lawyer who specializes in wills and estates. You could, however, choose to skip the lawyer and do it yourself with a will kit off the internet. But beware, even if it's properly witnessed and valid from a legal standpoint, you could accidentally make a minor mistake, which complicates the management of your estate. ultimately causing delays in settling your estate and potentially damaging the relationship of the most important people in your life, your beneficiaries. Not to mention, you could explode the costs of dealing with your estate far beyond what any lawyer might charge you to do your will. We can provide you with the names of lawyers near you who are part of the Archdiocese group of allied professionals. So I have good news and bad news. The good news is we all have a will. The bad news is if you didn't write the will, the government did. Well, how could that be a bad thing? The disadvantages of dying intestate is there is no executor appointed. So someone or some regulatory body will have to step in. And this is typically the public guardian and trustee. Because nothing is laid out, time can be a challenge as well, as potential family members try to figure out what you would want them to have, or what you would have wanted to have done. Maybe one of the family members will apply to be responsible and take on the role as the administrator, but they'll have to post a bond and do all the work without any guidance beyond the intestate guidelines. The cost for this process can be significant if the estate is of any size, and most estates in BC, if they involve a home, are easily worth $1 million. For example, the public guardian and trustee, if they charge their full fees, which can be up to 7% on some of your assets, it would not take long for the cost of your settling your estate to go for $50,000. When we die, our assets are broken into two groups. This is the same whether you have a will or not. First are the probated assets. Probated assets are those things you own all by yourself, such as your mutual fund or your GICs or your personal bank account. Other probated assets could be your car, or even if your home, if you're the last surviving spouse. Non-probated assets are typically things you hold jointly with your spouse, such as the family home or joint bank account. With these assets, when the first person passes away, it just simply becomes the property of the surviving spouse. Other non-probated assets include things like life insurance or segregated funds, which a segregated fund is like a mutual fund with an insurance company. When properly structured, even our tax-free savings accounts are considered non-probated assets. The focus of your estate will be on your probated assets, since they move through your estate and are subject to your will or the rules laid out by the government if you die intestate. So what happens with the probated assets when you do not have a will, meaning your estate is intestate? If you have an investment account, which is in your name alone, which makes it that probated asset, say it has $1 million in it. In this example, the first $300,000 would go to your spouse. The remaining money would be split 50-50 between your children and your spouse. If your children are minors, that money would be held in trust by the provincial trustee. But what if you don't have a spouse or any children? Well, being intestate, your assets would first go to your parents if they're alive. If they're gone, then they would go to your siblings or to your nieces and nephews and so on down to your cousins. If you have nobody and you're all alone, then your estate just goes to the government, not to a friend, not to your favorite charity. If you have a will, things are a little different. Namely, you select the executor and how much they can charge the estate for managing the process, and you decide how your probated assets are to be handled. If you're named as the executor, the will is a document which puts you to work. It will guide you through dealing with the probated assets of the estate. While you will be involved in dealing with non-probated assets, you're not responsible under your duties as the executor for these assets, since they do not form part of the estate. I like to use non-probated assets, such as a savings account with an insurance company, as a way to create an early distribution of the estate to beneficiaries without creating a liability to the executor. This can be very beneficial since it's not uncommon for the probated assets, even simple things like a bank account, to take 1 to 2 years to be ready for distribution to beneficiaries. If you are the executor, the pressure to distribute money early can be significant. However, the challenge is, if you give out the money before you have paid all the debts of the estate, you are personally liable for the outstanding debts, and you may not be able to ask the beneficiaries for the money back simply because they may have already spent it. Moving on to the executors. Imagine with me, you're at your best friend's place and he asks you to be his executor. Wow, what an honor. You immediately say, well, absolutely, buddy. The evening goes on and you don't give it much thought. You get home and you tell your wife and she says, honey, What does that mean? Well, you spend the next 4 hours on the floor with your computer looking up what did you agree to? How long is it going to take? What challenges should you be aware of as the executor? Can I be personally sued by the family? Well, what if you change your mind? Should I be calling my buddy back and just bowing out? Let's first understand what you're taking on. If you agreed and poof, your buddy is gone, now you're the executor. After the funeral, but before initiating an administration, I want you to stop. This really should be done before you agree to be the executor, but it is important to do it again before initiating administration. Assess the complexity and time commitment of acting as an executor before proceeding. Executors have the right to refuse, and the alternative named would take over, or somebody would apply for the role. Alternatively, consider hiring a corporate executor or a trust service, as they have the experience, the time, the impartiality, and competence to administer even the most complicated estates. If proceeding, executors should assess their own personal risk and consider obtaining executor insurance to protect yourself and your family. You're welcome to drop me an email and I'll send you the estate risk profile. So being the executor, no big deal. It's simple, right? We have a document which walks you through the steps, which if we had an extra 30 minutes, I could review it with you. But rather than that, you can just request it and I'll send it out to you. But here's the job in a nutshell. The person who made the will dies, and as the executor, you're responsible for safeguarding the property left behind, paying for the funeral arrangements, locating all of their properties known as the assets of the estate, paying off all of the debts and all of their taxes, and then distributing what's remaining to the beneficiaries named in the will, all while making sure to adhere to your responsibility of fiduciary duty. If you need help as a certified executor's advisor, I can assist you with creating your support network to help you out. I include this support for my clients as part of my service to ensure everything goes as planned. Have you ever heard the phrase, we are stewards of the gifts God has given to us? As good stewards, we make the most of these gifts, hopefully building them up and passing them on. We pass on these gifts in many different ways. One way is through the distribution of our money through taxes. If you think of your tax dollars being your contribution to society, these dollars become your social dollars. By paying tax, we give these social dollars to the government, then they very carefully distribute our money back into society to help those less fortunate, build our roads and hospitals and so on. But what if you decided you could do better with the money that you built up? You could redirect these social dollars to things which matter to you. You might even be better able to manage these decisions than our government. You could still support the hospitals, but you could also support the poor, the elderly, the young, your parish, or many other things that matter to you. To illustrate some of these things, which can be done with some estate planning, I'm going to use charitable gifting strategies as an example of how proper planning can have a dramatic impact. How we give matters in financial and estate planning. And John and Jill shared that they would like to give their local parish one of their investments. They have a non-registered stock portfolio, which has done really well. Their initial investment has grown from $10,000 all the way to $40,000 in the last number of years. And knowing they can donate this money and help out their parish today, while at the same time being able to save some money on tax, really appeals to them. They have two options in the way that they can donate this money. In both cases, the parish will end up receiving the same $40,000. And in both cases, the givers will receive a tax receipt for the full value of the gift, which will create a tax credit of about $17,433 to apply against their tax bill this year. So if John and Jill paid more than $17,433 in taxes to the government over the course of the year, they would be able to apply this tax credit and receive a refund for the excess income they paid out. If there is money left over from the tax credit, it can be rolled forward for up to 5 years, at which point anything left would be lost. So why does it matter how they do it? Well, they have two options when they donate the money. Option A, they can just contact their advisor, cash out their investment, put it in their bank account, and write a check. Very simple. However, using option A will trigger a T3 from the investment firm. This accounts for the money they made on their investment, since they owned it when it was cashed out, and the government will want to tax them on the money they made. The government will add half of the $30,000 they made to their taxable income for the year. In our example, the givers would need to pay an additional $4,230 in tax, eroding their actual tax savings and increasing the actual net cost of their gift. In option B, they could contact their advisor and have the investment transferred in kind to the Archdiocese for use by their parish. When the gift is transferred to the charity in what is referred to as in kind, the charity receives the investment as the actual shares in the company or in the investment that you owned. This process doesn't trigger any tax implication for you when you do this, because you did not sell the investment. Because you did not sell it, the bank or the investment firm will not send you a T3 for the money you made. Since you do not receive the T3, you do not need to pay any additional taxes. When the charity sells the investment, they will not be taxed either, since they are a charity and they don't pay any tax. This gives you the ability to receive the most benefit from your gift without sacrificing what you've given to the charity. If you want to donate to the Archdiocese in this way, talk with me and I can help you to make sure it is done properly. In estate planning, I like to use this analogy to explain life insurance and why I use it when it's appropriate. Think of the ball as your money. The further you can throw or hit the ball out there, the more your beneficiary or charity gets. Insurance acts like a golf club, allowing you to get the ball out there much further. In speaking with John and Jill Giver, they thought it would be a great idea to leave some of their RSPs for their children. Unless, of course, we could come up with a better idea, which could also benefit the Archdiocese and their local parish. So let's look at what will happen if the kids inherited a $200,000 RSP when mom and dad are gone. Option A. When the last of them dies, the $200,000 will be added to that person's income in the year that they die. In our example, we will use Jill Giver's estate. It would owe an extra $85,000 in tax, and the children would be left with the difference of $115,000 from mom and dad's gift of $200,000. Option B, with some planning, we could give the $200,000 RSP over a 10-year period to the Archdiocese at a rate of $20,000 per year. They would give us a receipt, which would lower our taxes that we pay. In our example, we would anticipate a non-refundable tax credit of $8,693 per year for the 10 years. This money would come right off the top of your tax bill, putting extra money in your bank account each year. We'd take that tax savings and purchase an estate bond, which is a joint last to die life insurance policy, the golf club. My example uses a 10-year guaranteed paid up life insurance policy. In this case, it was issued by BMO Insurance. It guarantees a death benefit of $184,000 and is projected at Jill's age 90 to be worth $469,000 or an additional $285,000. You will notice in option B, the government does not get any money. You took the $85,000 of social dollars, the money you would have paid in taxes, and redirected it to give $200,000 to the church and $185,000 to as much as $469,000 to your children, tax-free and outside of your estate, meaning no probate and no delay in the receiving of their gift, simply by planning. This is the type of work I do with my clients, and I would be happy to show you how we may be able to help you. There are lots of ways to give. We went through a couple different ways. We're all different. Some have more money, some have less, and we work with everyone. A simple plan can be very effective, and a conversation costs you nothing, but might ignite in you the fire to make things happen. The Archdiocese has the Catholic Legacy Society. This gives you the chance so that the Archdiocese know you want to help out. You can join the Catholic Legacy Society by going to their website, and I've got that on the bottom there, and we can make sure that that's shared. And if you want to give, we can help you organize your gifting plan. If you want to add wording to your will, you can do that. Or if you want to make a change to the beneficiary on your life insurance, you can do that as well. And here's some of the wording that we would use to accomplish that. And again, we can help you to make sure that it is exactly what you want to have said and done. Additional wording options are shown here as well. You might want to leave it up to the Archdiocese to decide where the need is the strongest, or you might have a specific area that you feel is more important. And again, we help you with the wording on that. And remember, everyone needs a plan, and no plan is still a plan. I'd like to thank you for your time this evening. We'll now conduct that quick poll, and it'll give you an opportunity to request a meeting with me if you'd like to meet with me privately. And again, thank you for your time this evening, and I'll now pass it back to Mike.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Joe. Fantastic. And, you know, again, lots of information there and terminology as well. And, you know, particularly when you get into the tax benefits and capital gains and all those kind of scenarios as Joe went through it. So reach out, feel free. And again, it's confidential, it's free. And if you like to explore any of the information you just heard, there's really some significant opportunities to explore there. So please do answer the survey here if you have a few more seconds, and then we will turn the page in a few seconds into our next speaker, my good friend Peter Nobes. So thanks, Joe. Really appreciate it. And with that, let's hand it over to Peter.
Thank you, Mike. Are we good to go? And if we could have the first slide, please, Fernando. Very good. Thank you, Mike. Once again, my name is Peter Nobes. I'm Director of Catholic Cemeteries. It's a pleasure to spend a few minutes with you tonight to share with you information about meaningful funerals and sacred burial. I was watching the Queen's funeral the other night. I had caught snippets of it, of course, when it actually occurred, but I actually took the time to listen to it the other night. And there's a beautiful phrase in there I thought I'd start out with. Christ rose from the dead and offers life to all, abundant life now and life with God in eternity. So we have great news in our faith and in our journey as Christians. And part of that journey, of course, which we'll cover off, I'll talk a bit about our sacred journey, how our ministry fits in, why a meaningful funeral is healing and offers us hope, how sacred burial at a Catholic cemetery is different, and why preparation is an act of caring. We are a ministry of hope and healing, and my hope tonight is to share with you some information that encourages you to do some planning and some thinking and have some discussions with your loved ones. We talked about an estate plan. So if you think of an estate plan as a pie, there are different slices in your pie. And we talked about the will, the executor, your healthcare plan. So I'm going to cover off with you two other slices of your pie. Now, one is a funeral plan, and secondly is a sacred burial, a pre-need arrangement plan of your burial space. So with that, I'd like to demonstrate maybe two scenarios. If I could flip the slide, please. I thought I'd share a meaningful story with you. I moved here as a young man when I was 26, and I befriended a neighbor, Mary, who was a 72-year-old retired school teacher. Mary very quickly became my best friend. We met every week for a cup of tea and chats, and she had a great sense of humor. I credit Mary with getting me back into my faith, and she was a wonderful mentor. Mary had one sister who was quite ill, who was living in England, and I became her caregiver. I became a care advocate when she went into hospital. And later in her life, when she was becoming more fragile with aging and with some of her health, she eventually died. Before she died, again, Mary, always being the teacher, said, "Lord, I'm ready. Take me anytime." She had great peace and great grace. She was well prepared. She had a funeral plan. She had her burial space, which is just 300 meters from my office here at Gardens of Gethsemane. So she died in great state of grace. Everything was organized. Her will, her estate matters went very smoothly. I also have a neighbor, Joan, who I used to cut the grass for her, and we'd sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk. And she was quite frail and elderly. I often offered her to help her with you know, do you need any help? She was estranged from the church. She has two sons, which she didn't have a close relationship with. Joan was in and out of the hospital in the last year of her life a number of times. And so I encouraged some planning and some thinking about her affairs and if I could help her. Every time she denied it and she avoided the topic, which was her decision, of course. And ultimately, Joan went on and she died. Her house, she didn't have a will. She died intestate. The will was, and her estate was caught in probate for a period of about 2 years. And worse for her sons is that they didn't know what she wanted for a funeral and burial arrangement. So for them, it was kind of a time of distress and confusion. My hope for the community is to be like Mary, to take the time to prepare and think these things through. And once you get into the topic matter, it actually alleviates any anxiety that we may have around death and dying. Next slide, please. Just to let you know, where does our ministry kind of fit? We're on a sacramental journey. Our life with Christ is really from our baptism to our eternal life. We're not only baptized into the life of Christ, we're baptized into his death and what that means in terms of his resurrection for us. So that gives us great hope. When you think about it, we're kind of on a cycle of life. We baptize our children. We have them go through confirmation. Many of us will go through the sacrament of marriage. Some of us will go into vocational life. And just think these are our sacramental milestones that we have, but we have very important life milestones, birthdays, graduations from school, retirement, and so on. Our ministry really falls into later, for most of us, in the autumn of life or the later life. When we do become aged, we have the sacrament of the sick, a beautiful grace available to us. I like to mention this because it's not the sacrament of dying, it's in the final rites. It is actually something that's available to us if we're going in for an operation or we have a health ailment that offers us grace and care from the church. When there is a death, we have the funeral rite, which I'll explain in a moment, and we have sacred burial in our Catholic cemetery, and which has some benefits, which I'll also explain in a moment. We offer bereavement support, and we offer hope and education work for everlasting life. Next slide, please. A Catholic funeral and burial offers rituals with meaning, rituals that heal. The funeral liturgy covers 3 main components. The first is the vigil or the wake. When there is a death, we have a gathering together to offer support to the family and to offer them our prayers, our social support, any meal support, and so on. The main liturgical aspect of the funeral rite is the funeral mass. And I'd like to point out in the picture in the center there that the casket there is covered with a baptismal pall. So it's one of those things that's kind of a circle of life experience, that we come into this world in a baptismal pall and we're leaving this world in a baptismal pall. At the funeral mass, we ask God to forgive the person for their sins. We ask God to accept them, the person, the loved one, in God's loving embrace. And we're there to be supportive for the family to help them through their transition. The final and third component to the funeral rite is the interment, the graveside interment, where we kind of say our final goodbyes. And it's actually called kind of leave taking, where we move from our relationship with the person live on this earth to a relationship of memory and of prayer and of love. Next slide, please. I meant to take the transitions out of this one, so Fernando, if you can just forward them all through, that would be great. One of the people we've worked with is Dr. Alan Wolfelt. He's a leading North American authority on loss and bereavement. He's a psychologist by nature, and he's a well-published psychologist. So these are the different aspects we go through when there's a loss of a loved one. We have to deal with the reality of the loss, and so for some of us, that can be anger, bewilderment, sorrow, deep bereavement. Recall, remembering the person's life and what that meant to us and the meaning of that, going through supports with our family and community, and expressing our love for that loved one, ultimately search for meaning. What was the meaning of the life and what does that mean? And ultimately transcendence. Of course, transcendence is for us is the meaning, the departure of the soul. We're born with a mortal body and we're born with an immortal soul. We believe that the soul continues and will reconnect with the body. So let's take a look at how we are interconnected. If we can move to the next slide, please. Over to the right, when there's a death, the very first provider are funeral homes. We work with independent funeral homes such as Kearney's Funeral Services, Olivera Funeral Services, Arbutus Funeral Services, to name a few. The funeral homes are licensed providers, and their job is preparation of the body, transportation services, all the paperwork, certificates and forms, obituary notices, and coordinating with us, the cemetery provider, and with the parish. So the second circle you see there is the cemetery. So we do planning tools and education events such as this. We offer sacred burial. We take care of all the services related to the burials, where we do an opening service. There's the actual burial and then the closing service on the burial, and we take care of the memorialization. And then the third component of this, of course, is the parish, where the funeral liturgy of the vigil, the mass, and the interment, not the interment, the mass mainly takes place, and where the parish is the place of support for the family. Next slide, please. So a Catholic cemetery is a place of faith, hope, and remembrance. We really are the bridge between the church on earth and the church in heaven. Right in the funeral liturgy, we say, life will change, not end. Life will change, not end. So we believe in that the temple was the body was the temple of the Holy Spirit, and that's why we take great care of the body at the time of death. Our cemetery is a testament to our faith. We have many sections devoted to our revered saints and to our different areas. Next slide, please. So how is a Catholic cemetery different? There are three types of cemeteries. There are municipal cemeteries, there are corporate cemeteries, and there are religious cemeteries. So we are religious cemeteries. Cemetery are owned and operated by the Archdiocese of Vancouver. Any proceeds over our costs stay in the community to support the ministries and outreach and the pastoral duties of the Archdiocese. So that's something that I'd like you to know about. We offer sacred grounds. Our grounds are blessed by an archbishop. We have a chapel with monthly masses. We have a monthly mass of remembrance on the last Sunday of every month. We offer community events, and we're coming up to the month of Holy Souls. So a hollow is a saint. So we have All Saints Day. The evening before All Saints Day is All Hallows Eve. So we offer a candlelight vigil, All Saints Day, and All Souls Day. So it's a lesser known triduum that we have been promoting or highlighting to the community. So we have special events such as that. We recently had an infant loss mass for those that have unfortunately had a loss of an infant or a miscarriage. First and foremost, we're a ministry. And we're a ministry. We're here primarily to help you and your family at your time of need. And we encourage families to make pre-arrangement plans, which is one of the reasons we do this talk together. Next slide, please. There are three things that we offer. We offer traditional plots, so that is casket burial in a traditional plot, a ground scenario. Two, we offer crypts, which is casket burial in a building, which is usually called a mausoleum. We have interior crypts and exterior crypts. And thirdly, we offer burial and interment options for cremated remains. Just a few words on cremated remains. Since the Vatican II in the mid-60s, cremation has been a viable means of disposition for Catholics. The one thing that the church asks us, because of the way the Christ died, the way the readings take place, is that we have the full body present at the funeral mass with cremation occurring afterwards. The cremated remains are the body just in another form. So we wouldn't scatter body. We're called not to scatter remains or scatter them, nor make jewelry from remains. We're called to keep them whole, and we're called to keep them in a secure place, which is a Catholic cemetery, where they can be prayed over by the community. So we're urged not to keep urns at home or to skip the important rituals that the church offers us. Next slide, please. So preparation is an act of care, and why is it an act of care? Well, coming back to the story I mentioned earlier with Mary versus Joan, Joan didn't make any plans, and it was quite chaotic for her family. When there is a death, there's something like 90 decisions that have to be made. The nice thing is that you can make a lot of these decisions in advance and put together some plans and have some dialogue with your family on what your preferences are and why you're making those decisions. Certainly, in the case of a couple, as an example, this lessens the burden on the surviving spouse when there is a death, so the plans have been done in advance. I can avoid emotional mistakes or any judgment impairment that are impaired by sorrow. They're witnessed by your faith. So these are important considerations. Just a quick story. Every year we used to go back to St. Thomas, Ontario to visit my in-laws. And one year we were asking, dear mom and dad, do you guys have your plans made? So we said, let's go for a drive in the car, which we did. We went to the local cemetery, and there was their headstone already in place with their name engraved. All I had to do was engrave some dates. And when we got back to the house, we opened the closet and he showed me a suit and he says, I want to be buried in that. So he had a kind of a very deeper example of how much detail and pre-planning they had done. And that was a nice gift to us because we were just present for the funeral itself. We didn't have to worry about too many arrangements. We had to make some final decisions, but it was a nice, very nice gift from my in-laws to our family, not having to worry about so many things. We get two types of calls on a Monday morning. The first one is, my mom died on the weekend or my spouse died on the weekend, what do I do? So again, that's an at-need circumstance that requires a fair amount of organizing in a very short period of time. The second type of call we get is, oh, my mom died on the weekend or my spouse died on the weekend. I need to make, I need to set the date, and I'm just letting you guys know so that we can make the final arrangements with the funeral home and take care of that. Next slide, please. Fernando, please. Thank you. So how do you go about doing that? Discern your choice, whether you're more interested in a traditional service, or you're thinking of cremation in terms of your final means, final disposition. There's a whole set of decisions that relate to A or B. When you do that, you can meet with an advisor. We will go over your budget, help you determine the best plan that makes sense for you and your family. And we prepare a document. So a will is your legal document on your preferences and instructions. When you make a plan with us, your burial space as an example, or your funeral plan, it is a legal document documenting your preferences. We ask you as an example who the burial space is for and who can make decisions on that. So those are important considerations. Next slide, please. Just as a final note before we close off, there's a lot of videos and information available on our website. This is our homepage. Right on the homepage, you can see that you can download a free planning guide. So there's worksheets in that would help you with not only your funeral and cemetery planning, but also your estate planning with Joe. So there's some tools in there. You can book an appointment right online. I would like to mention we're announcing a 5% discount, Holy Souls discount until the end of November. So if you get the process started by making an appointment, you can earn an extra, you can essentially save the GST. That's a little more attractive than the $100 we mentioned in the invitation. So I just wanted to encourage you to get the ball started, if you will, and to take the first steps to making your arrangement plans. So with that, I'd like to close things off and to say thank you for your time and to encourage you to take the first steps. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Peter. And Fernando, do we have one more pop-up for the guests tonight? Yeah, there it is. So just a quick question, take a few seconds if you'd like. We always appreciate the feedback as we try to fine tune these. We are right on 8 o'clock, so congratulations team, well done. You know, and a quick summary tonight, you know, again, a lot of information, and when do we talk about these things really is, you know, the discussion. And I think what you heard in all the speakers tonight is how the planning takes the stress out of the equation, not only for you, but for all family members and executors and anybody who may be involved. So, you know, you heard the difference between the Mary and the Joan. You know, 2 years of stress and legal for family members once you're deceased is something significant to consider. And not only the cost savings, but you know, where potential assets are going. So lots on the table in this hour tonight. And thank you for joining us. And ultimately, again, please feel free to reach out, you know, confidentially for free and have a discussion. And we kind of often say it's like writing a letter. Where do you start? But once you start, it'll come out for you and your needs and your family in the process, and it'll start to create its own identity. So just encourage you to explore it and have a conversation and go from there. So these events and evenings don't happen by himself. So I do want to quickly thank two people you haven't seen here tonight. Fernando, who's part of the development team at the Archdiocese, who's doing all our IT and tech. Thank you so much, Fernando. There he is. Really appreciate it. Did a great job. And Anna, this whole evening starts with her putting us all together, all the thousands of details that go into inviting you and the follow-ups that we look forward to connecting with. So Anna, thank you so much for putting this all together. And lastly, Matthew from the communications at the Archdiocese as well, who helped, who's not on the call tonight, but did some good stuff as well. To our three speakers, you could have had an hour each or more for sure. There's definitely some speed talking going on. And again, I mentioned lots of terminology. So we're hoping to hear from you. We're here as, you know, that sounding board for you. And that's what we really hope to achieve tonight, that start a relationship and a conversation to look after you, your family and your needs. So with that, I'd like to thank you. Have a great evening to you and your families. Happy and healthy future. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.